Thanks for tuning in to the Replatform podcast sponsored by Amplify Klaviyo. You listen to myself, James Gurd, and my co-host, Paul Rogers. How are you today, sir?
Yeah, good. Thank you. How are you doing?
Yeah, I believe it's been a busy week.
Very busy week. Far too busy.
You look mildly broken. Let's see if we can get you less broken by the end of the podcast.
Yeah, hopefully.
Thanks to regular listeners for tuning back in. We do appreciate it, and a warm welcome if this is your first time. We hope you enjoy the content. Do subscribe to get new episode alerts. We drop one every week, usually on a Tuesday, and we'd love a like on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple if you find this episode interesting. So let's introduce what we're talking about today, and then we'll hand over to our guest. So the topic is multi-storefront management on BigCommerce, understanding how mature the solution is and where it's going. We'll be covering what BigCommerce's current MSF setup is, how it handles common business challenges, current limitations, and what that means for e-commerce businesses and the future roadmap. So let's introduce our BigCommerce guest. So we have Kristina, who heads up the product management. Hi, Kristina. How are you?
Hey, doing good. Happy to be here.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. Would you like to give people a bit of an introduction to yourself and your role and what you do at BigCommerce?
Sure. So I'm from BigCommerce product management team based in Kyiv, Ukraine. Mostly I work on multi-storefront project delivery, but at some level I also work with catalog and with some other areas and with multi-language at some point soon, hopefully soon. So that's my primary focus area.
Amazing. Sounds very interesting product role. Excellent. And the one and only Jim Herbert, who's Senior VP and GM. Actually, how many different words can you get in your job title, Jim?
I want to make it so long that my job title actually, as an acronym, forms a brand new word. It'll be appearing on Countdown sometime soon. So that's what I'm hoping for. Senior Vice President and General Manager. There you go, of EMEA.
Excellent. So a lot of people know you, some won't. Do you want to give people a flavour for what your role involves? But also, do you want to give BigCommerce a positioning to those who haven't worked with the platform before?
Yeah, absolutely. No, thanks for that, James. So, Jim Herbert. I've been in and around the e-commerce industry since around about 1999. Started out as a developer. So I was a developer on the old ATG platform. I can say old because I was talking to Ian Davis at Oracle the other day, and it is finally end of life. There's nothing left of it, apparently. So there we go. Doing work on B2C, B2B, and then financial services, oddly, on that. Ended up starting my own systems integration firm called Sceneric in 2007. We became big Hybris partners, and I worked on e-commerce implementations for about 100 customers globally, and took that business truly global. We had offices in Hong Kong 6 months after we started, and we delivered some fantastic sites for luxury brands. I still can't say the name of them together, their legal team, but Samsung Electronics, Rafa, LK, basically all of KPS's backbook right now, from what I understand. And joined BigCommerce 2 years ago next week, actually, next Wednesday, to run the EMEA expansion, based on that kind of expansion that I've done with my own work and having that background in eventually sales, but also that tech side. Brent and the guys thought I'd be the right choice to take over from Mark Adams, who got BigCommerce going in 2018, to carry on that international expansion of what was an Australian founded but US business. And so that's kind of what we've been doing. We were 24 people, we're now 117 in the EMEA region. And it's based on the fact that, BigCommerce as a platform, we like to put it down as the platform for merchants of all sizes of growth. We have a self-serve component, a bit like Shopify, ultimately, where people can come on, start a trial and buy a store at sort of $30, $79 or $299, depending on the different plan types and different features that you want. The big difference, though, is what we talk about is open SaaS. And this is where we are, that kind of platform for merchants of all sizes of growth, right? What that means, open SaaS, is that effectively you get all the benefits of SaaS. So, the super easy way to implement and start a store, ultimately, the scalability being done by us, all the upgrades being done by us, the PCI compliance and security all being looked after by us, effectively all that hosting and software all being in one subscription to our software, ultimately. But with the open APIs that Kristina and team are creating, the microservices, we're part of the Mac Alliance. I sit on the Growth Council of the Mac Alliance. It allows enterprises to also come in. And, one of Brent, our CEO's big backgrounds is all about disruptive technology. One of his professors at Harvard was Clay Christensen, literally wrote the book on disruptive technology and how, you watch things catch up. And I saw it in my own e-commerce background. When Mark started at BigCommerce in 2018, bluntly, I emailed him and said, "What are you doing at a Shopify competitor? Are you crazy?" Because we came from that kind of monolithic enterprise background. I said, "No, come and see the software, Jim. It's really, really good." And I left the first demo and turned to my old business partner and went, "Yeah, blimey, we could have done all those big sites that we did on Hybris on this software." And I'll be honest with you, I went at about half the price, so we got out of it at the right time. But actually, in all seriousness, what we're now doing, and particularly in the EMEA region, is focusing on that mid-market enterprise sector and bringing the benefits of the wisdom of the crowds of having 70,000 merchants, or 68,000, I think is the official number we're allowed to talk about. All the kind of things and optimization around one-page checkout, for instance, on that side, we can bring those benefits to big merchants where that's really, really important, right? If you're doing millions online and you can get a small percentage improvement in conversion rate, that's a lot more money for you guys. And that's what people need, certainly in these current times. So it's exciting. We keep winning new business. You'll see on our results. I can't talk forward facing, obviously, because the SEC will chop our hands off. But fundamentally, it's been a very exciting journey so far. And working with the brilliant product and engineering teams out in Ukraine and Kristina running those teams, it's a joy, frankly, guys. It's absolutely fantastic. And I came out of a launch celebration for one of our biggest customers in the fashion sector last night. And all I heard, genuinely, never had a moan. That barely ever happens with launch celebrations. Always someone says, "Yeah, that could have been better." Everyone's super excited about the performance and everything that's working on that side. So it's really good.
Great. Lovely. Yeah, so I'll start with the first question. And just going back to multi-storefront. So I guess over the last couple of years, probably as kind of BigCommerce has moved up market and Shopify's in a similar boat, one of the biggest question marks from some of the real kind of like global brands has been around managing, I guess, particularly the international side, but potentially multi-brand as well, and some other routes that require multiple stores. So historically, brands would have had multiple BigCommerce instances, and then a few weeks ago, you fully released the multi-storefront capability. Can you, from a high level, just kind of walk us through what that looks like and kind of how it compares to some of the more mature solutions like a Magento or a Salesforce?
Kristina, do you want me to start? And then I'll hand over to you for the detail?
Of course I do.
Look, I'm happy for everyone to know listening to the podcast. Kristina's here to keep me honest, right? It's
That's
very,
my
very
job.
important. That's your job. I do run the sales team. That's how this works. No, seriously. It's a really interesting one, Paul, bluntly, in that, ultimately, the very first implementation of multi-storefront, as we were looking at it, was multi-brand. We used to talk about it internally as cats.com and dogs.com. And being a US headquartered business, that's a really important use case there, ultimately. So the way BigCommerce has built this technology out is on a kind of channel manager. We released at I believe the end of 2020, ultimately, a way of managing multiple channels. And effectively, storefronts can be different channels, okay? So you can have different stencil storefronts. You can have stencil plus WordPress if you want to, storefronts or other headless connectors that we have out there, or a pure headless front end ultimately. What I'll say on top of that as well is that as a member of the Mac Alliance and being in that composable architecture club, ultimately we do everything headless first or API first. So when we develop new features, we roll them out as APIs to developers and large enterprises, and then we look to take those features and make them more native, give them control panel backend access, so that the smaller merchants get the benefits of these things that we're putting out there. So the reason I mention that is obviously the next use case for multi-storefront is obviously going international on that side. So using different storefronts in different languages to be able to go out and sell across borders and to other areas of the world, which of course for medium-sized retailers is probably taking the next step. Is a brilliant way of growing your business, particularly if you've got product that people really want and you want to get it out there and sell it. Now, there's a lot more complication around there, and not complication around the e-commerce side. You've got to think about taxes, duties. Obviously, some big event happened in Britain recently. So if you're a British retailer and you're trying to sell into Europe, there's a lot of other bits and pieces you need to think about. And that's where our tech partners like Avalara and Digital River and stuff, people like that can get involved. But fundamentally, we at the minute where we are with multi-storefront compared to our competitors, we have a fantastic way, and I will hand over to you in a minute, Kristina, that allows people to create a number of different storefronts. Ultimately, there are some limits around it. It's SaaS software, but obviously every single deal We do pass through the product team to make sure that we can see how many limits there are. So a great example of that would be Bullet Group phones, MotorolaRugged.com and Cat phones. They're running on BigCommerce Multi-Storefront. They're using multi-language. They're using WordPress as a front end. You can see by the number of flags on their website. They've got a ton of different storefronts at the front end. They've got well over 20, I think, on that side. They've got a very small catalog. So it's kind of like a matrix way of working. Fundamentally, though, that does give them that ability. There's a really nice case study. They up their revenue 200%, Podjo works in sales, with a 125% increase in AOV and a 35% decrease in the abandoned cart rate by using multi-storefront, by using these different channel front ends in different languages to basically sell that product externally. So if you're going down that route, if you're going down a headless route, then I think we're very functionally equivalent to pretty much every competitor out there, with all the other benefits of fast time to market, getting the speed out there and the agility that you need that you get with BigCommerce as a platform anyway. The next step, of course, is to make all that functionality available, natively in our stencil front end as well, for people who want to use kind of our template engine, a bit like the Fantastics of this world, to build, deeply within BigCommerce. And for that, Kristina, I'll hand over to you.
I knew that. Yeah, I knew that's coming. So in general, I wanted to add a little bit on top of where we started. It relates to the question that you've all asked. So I remember when we were just starting doing interviews to basically better understand what is needed, what should be the initial features to include to multi-storefront. I remember we started interviewing people that have different brands or they sell to different shopper segments like B2C and they're opening a B2B website or vice versa. And the biggest pain that I still remember coming from all those interviews were around the need to basically switch between different admin panels. And some people had 9 stores across 3-4 different e-commerce platforms, and it's a nightmare. So basically, all of them were saying that we need to grow our business, but it's basically impossible. We need to keep a whole bunch of people just logging into those stores if I need to change one word in description for a few products. So that was basically the main goal that we kept in mind when we were planning the work, scoping, doing that. We wanted to make sure that in order to manage all different lines of businesses, people won't need to go through this nightmare with clicking through different control panels and different e-commerce platforms. So this is what we did. Of course, being product manager is hard. You need to learn how to say no when you would like to tackle and deliver all of it. But you need to deliver at least something and basically move incrementally. So, of course, we didn't manage to deliver all at the same time, but we delivered pretty solid functionality that covers end-to-end the ability to sell different brands within the same region or to different shopper segments also within the same region by using BigCommerce native technology powered by Stencil, and the same capabilities, but also including the ability to localize content and storefront with headless and sell basically in different regions and in different countries. And there is a bunch of new cool stuff that we've already planned to work on, as Jim mentioned. So the next big goal that we are aiming to is to enable merchants to sell in different regions in different languages using BigCommerce Stencil native technology. So basically looking over what is left there, it's not that big. So the features and things that we've included into the initial release actually contributes already a lot to delivering that to merchants. So looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, let's carry on that theme, because that's what we wanted to do today, is be really practical with people about what are the common business challenges people face with international multi-storefront and what you currently do. So the first bit you said, so it's a single instance, a single login, but you have a multiple. Is there a limit on how many storefronts you can have on one login? I'm assuming there will be.
Yes, it is. But mostly there is a default limit that we set. Basically, we put those limits with performance considerations. So we basically determine the maximum number of storefronts and maximum catalog size, for example, orders number, traffic, to basically ensure that all those storefronts will be performant, comparing to if merchant is just managing one storefront within one store. But there might be exceptions. So as Jim mentioned, basically different combination of parameters will give you a different outcome. So the current limit is 5 BigCommerce storefronts and 15 headless storefronts connected to a single store. Yeah. But as Jim already mentioned, we have Motorola with 27 storefronts. So basically, this is a flexible number.
Yeah, okay. And it's very hard, James, in the podcast to listen to ether forever, because obviously we've always got, we have a performance optimization team working over all the code all the time, refactoring, making sure that the product runs better and better and better. And so, if someone listens to this in a year's time, I urge them to talk to one of my reps, because there's a very good chance that it's not that limit anymore, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, things move on fast. Yeah. And another thing that'd be interesting for people to understand is, because one of the challenges in previous, multiple instances, okay, you've got to connect up content management systems, you've got to manage the content separately. Are there any limitations in terms of people's ability to use a single set of templates, design, and roll that across sites versus having completely distinct designs and templates per storefront within the same login?
Both is possible. So merchants can either use the same templates, the same customization across all the storefronts if that's single brand, but just basically localized for different audiences or for different countries, or they can create a completely unique shopping experience for different brands. So both are possible.
Fantastic. Okay, cool, excellent. Paul, I think you've got some questions around pricing and currency, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So first question. So in terms of managing currencies, so how does that work across the different storefronts? And are you able to tie a single currency to a store and then allow multiple currencies against a completely different store? So for example, a rest of world with multiple currencies versus a UK store with just GBP.
So technically, yes, this is possible. The currencies are being set up on a store level where you can enable all the currencies that you need. Then on each storefront level, you can select which one you would like to be a default one for that specific storefront. So that for UK one, you can set GBP, and for French one, you can set euro. However, there is a limitation there that we are planning to address moving forward. So right now, if you enable 3 currencies, they all will be visible on all storefronts. Basically, just can control the default one that shoppers see when they land on that storefront. And moving forward, we are going to add the ability to basically select which currencies are visible on each storefront. So this is
I guess the point there, Kristina, is that's the template code, right? For stencil.
Yep.
So if it's headless, actually, you can just default and hide them using that. And actually, if you wanted to go into the, if you're an enterprise merchant and you want to go into the template for a particular storefront and just go to one currency only, that's also another way of doing it. And that's part of that flexibility you get with the platform.
Yeah. That makes sense. And if you do have multiple currencies enabled, is it does the currency change via IP, or is it do typically would a user just change it manually via a currency selector or country selector?
It's pretty flexible, so you can either set up for which countries you would like this specific currency to be displayed by default, or shoppers can always change the currency if that guess wasn't correct and they would like to use another one.
We have an example of that. RivetandHide.com uses GeoIP using some of the libraries, open source libraries that we make available to do exactly that, for to default it to the currency the country is coming from.
What was that site? Hide.com?
Rivet and Hide. They're a luxury clothing retailer with a shop in the West End.
Great, lovely.
They're one of Brent's favourites, where they do these Japanese jeans that he loves. So I remember it well. It's embedded in my brain.
Great. And then what about price books? So can you manage price books against all of the currencies and set kind of local price books per country? So for example, if you had France and Germany, both euros, can you then set different European price books or euro price books?
Oh yes, you can. So with prices, we actually we actually did some really good job to enable all the flexibility that merchants need there. We've spent some time doing interviews, and one of the main issues that merchants in Europe were raising is that they would like to have different prices in euro for different countries, because as they told me, in Germany, they are able to sell stuff much more expensive and for the higher price than in other European countries. I don't know why, but this is what it is. So with priceless, merchants can set different price for the same product and then basically assign this price list to a storefront to apply those prices. On top of that, if they need, there is also the ability to add customer group there so that these prices will be only visible on that storefront for some specific customers within that storefront. So it's pretty flexible.
Yeah, it's interesting because some brands have limited down their international sites to only deliver to that particular country for those reasons, so that you can't then get people cross-border shopping to get preferential pricing. That's true. That's a really good bit of flexibility, actually, because the dangerous assumption that having a euro price book should be the same across every European country. Linked to Paul's question on currency is this has come up in other projects about the inability to connect to different bank accounts for settlement to avoid FX conversion fees. And my understanding with the MSF is you can connect into multiple bank accounts, can't you, on a single storefront? So put a US dollar transaction to a US dollar bank for settlement, euro to euro bank, GBP into a UK bank, etc.
So I'll start this, Kristina, and then do keep me honest, because this is getting quite technical. You can through the same payment provider, I understand. So where we are right now, again, bearing in mind when we're recording this, etc., is that you effectively we drive all traffic to one checkout with MSF. So if you look at that big fashion retailer I mentioned earlier, you'll get to their checkout page. And then fundamentally, they're using Adyen as their payment provider, one of our pre-integrated payment providers that are in there. It captures in the currency that you need, and then effectively goes through to Adyen, and they distribute it into the right bank account. If you know what I'm behind the scene. Now, pretty much the day that one of your other podcasts, TJ Gamble over in the US, put a kind of MSF breakdown out on LinkedIn, we released the ability to have multiple checkouts per storefront, but still at the minute with the same single credit card set of details, if you know what I mean, or PSP set of details on that side. But I know that's on the roadmap, right, Kristina, that we can then effectively have to the point of not just different capturing different currencies on each checkout. You could actually use a different payment provider if you wanted to for each checkout, but that's not there yet. Again, keeping me honest, but it's on the roadmap, right?
Yes, it is. From what I know, from what we're hearing from merchants, there are three primary needs there. So first, basically be able to connect only PayPal for US website and only Adyen, for example, for European ones. The second one would be the ability, what you mentioned, to connect different banking accounts where you're still using Adyen, but you would like to have US account to put money from US shoppers and UK account to basically get money from UK shoppers. And the third one is within the same payment provider, like Adyen, control which payment methods are available on which storefront. For example, to only accept payment through invoices on your B2B website and enable only credit cards on your B2C website. So there are basically three parts in that payment story, and we do plan to address all of them. Some of those things are already supported within payment providers themselves, because partners, it's a really great joy to work with partners because their solutions are amazing. Like, you don't have to do anything on the platform side because you have partners and they are doing all of that. So there is some flexibility there enabled by partners, by specific payment providers. For example, I know that Adyen is pretty smart in terms of displaying local payment methods based on from where shopper is coming from. So there are some things like that merchants can always use. However, on the platform side, as Jim mentioned, we do plan to add this flexibility so that merchants can use that.
So basically now, if I'm a user and I've got a site which has got GBP, dollars and euros, and I'm using Adyen, for example, because they support multiple bank account connections, I can reduce my FX fees because I can just connect the correct transaction currency into that. But in the future, you'll be adding to MSF where I'm a global retailer and I only want my US dollar site to go into PayPal, but I want Adyen on my European site, or I want this other gateway on a particular. Yeah, okay, understood.
100%. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
What is Amplience? In a word, it's freedom. The freedom to build a digital experience as limitless as your vision. Create, preview, schedule, and manage all your content in one easy place. Find out more at amplience.com. Amplience. Experience freedom.
That's really nice clarification. Here's another. This is an edge case, but it's an interesting one. It's come up in only one project I've ever worked on. So typically, you have all these sites, and customers register on their local site. Like, I'm a UK customer. I go to brand X and I shop on the UK site. I'm registered, but I'm not registered on their French site, for example, or their US site. I found one customer who wants a global account, single sign-on. So if I register, no matter which site version I register on, I'm globally signed in and can sign in on any of their sites. Is that supported at all? I know it's a real edge case, but intrigued to know whether you can have a global sign-on so a customer can be visible across all those sites.
There's actually a funny story about that. When we were scoping the work around how customer accounts should work, we were doing a lot of interviews as well. So we were asking merchants, like, do you want this global customer login access, or you would like to keep it separate, basically separate customer account, separate store credits and all of that. And all the merchants, like 99%, were saying, we would like to have separate customer accounts because we don't want French shoppers to go to Germany because the prices are different. We don't want dogs.com customers go to cats.com customers with the same account. So they were all saying that we want those accounts to be separate. We scoped this work. We plan to keep those separate. But then at some point, our developers came in saying, like, we can pretty easily allow making those customer logins being global as well. So do you want us to add this flexibility? It will cost us like really small effort in terms of development, but we'll give an option to merchants. And we were like, okay, but people mentioned that they don't actually need that yet, but okay, let's skip it. So we've added this. Currently, it's available only through the API because we even didn't consider that this would be so popular. But once we release MultiStorefront, every maybe second merchant comes in asking, oh, can I switch to use global customer logins? So basically, it is possible. There is no control panel UI for that yet, but this can already be controlled through the API, and we will be addressing this in control panel as well because it appeared to be a popular one.
It's an interesting one. It comes up on every project I work on. Every merchant starts off saying it's an absolute must-have, and then when you talk about it and all the kind of like little knock-on effects and other things that they need to think about, they end up staying with independent accounts, or at least the majority do, which is interesting.
There's interesting GDPR issues with that, isn't there? To be honest, again, not a technical problem, but it's if you're treating yourself as separate businesses, yes, you're all one business, but you need to make sure your T's and C's cover that off, right?
Yeah, it's a really big business. Next question around stock. So this was something that I thought wasn't available yet, but James corrected me. So managing multiple stock files. So can I essentially have 3 storefronts within a single instance and then have 3 independent warehouses connected? So one per storefront, sorry.
It really depends on how to implement this solution. So as you know, yet BigCommerce natively don't have multi-location inventory management. Basically, out of the box, what you get is a single source of inventory in single location, single shipping origin. However, you can always use a third-party provider to manage warehouses, to manage inventory within those warehouses. In terms of the inventory management inside BigCommerce, so currently product shares the same stock across all the storefronts. So if you have 10 items of sneakers and those sneakers are sold on 3 storefronts, those 10 items will be shared across all 3 storefronts. However, I know that merchants are using product meta fields and third-party inventory management and warehouse management solutions to solve that. And basically, in that way, they are getting separate stock on separate warehouses for each storefront.
And I think
I'm sure you know more.
Yeah, I will build on that slightly. So our multi-location inventory functionality that we're building right now is in closed beta. And so what that means is for an enterprise merchant, if they want to use that. So a great example of an enterprise merchant that's thankfully restarted their project after the joys of COVID for a large department store that sells mainly luxury, Harvey Nichols. They're in the closed beta of multi-location inventory for exactly that reason, Paul. So, and of course, the nice thing about software as a service, and it's interesting because I have to keep on explaining this to people, especially people in enterprises who come from that monolithic background, is the fact that, as we build MLI, we're building it at the same time that Kristina's team are building Multi-Storefront. So it all works together. That's the kind of SaaS snowball, isn't it? You keep sticking functionality to it and it gets better and better. So that kind of level of requirement is definitely in there to make sure that happens. On that note as well, we do have, as Kristina said, we have various sort of shipping providers that can help us with this that are already pre-integrated. So never forget we have the one-click install app store within BigCommerce, which means it's super easy to add those in. And actually, one of our agency partners out of Sydney, Random, they have what they call their Random BOPIS app, which we're also using on projects right now, that then give you that level of aggregated stock position or the ability to say on this channel we've got this stock and on this channel we've got that stock. Because again, if you talk about a Harvey Nichols type retailer, that gets quite complicated. If you've got an Alexander McQueen dress and it's a load of money and it happens to be in the Hong Kong store, but someone orders it in London, you probably still want to ship it and sell that dress, right? There's a really nice big AOV on the horizon if you can do that, and we can give retailers like HN that flexibility with the software and the partners we have in the ecosystem.
Just one clarification on that to make sure I understand. So because I was looking at a use case the other day, so I've got a client who's got like 3 showrooms, and each showroom has ready and made products in stock, and they're in the ERP as separate stock locations on top of the web stock. So at the moment, then on a single storefront, it's not able to see that, or it's to be able to connect and say, because the ERP is saying, okay, there's 4 different stock holdings basically, and you've got a total of 12.
So at the moment, if you're in the closed beta, I believe of multi-location inventory, I believe we could do that. I believe. I'm not entirely certain. Sorry, James. It's one we need to actually sit in with the guys on that one. I know that with Random, BOPIS, yes, definitely is the answer to that. We can do it. So and of course they are re-engineering their app to work on our closed beta MLI APIs as well, right? So hence that we're making sure that we are taking real world use cases and putting them into the platform. That's the only way it's going to get better.
Right. And then I'll ask the next one. So the next one's focused on catalog. So how does it work around managing different catalogs per storefront? Like what can and can't you do around kind of product data in particular?
So with managing product catalog, it's actually pretty flexible in terms of creating separate catalogs for separate storefronts. So there is a single, how we call it, product library where you just create all your products. And from there, you can make single product available at the same time on one or multiple storefronts in one or multiple categories. So basically, the same product at the same time can be available on multiple storefronts in different categories within those storefronts. On top of that, what we are going to work on in 2022 is the ability, for example, to set different product name for different storefronts, or SEO description, or different images, basically to give merchants flexibility to merchandise products differently for different brands, for different audiences, for different countries, including basically localizing products data into different languages. So that's what's coming. Which Jim is very excited of.
Very excited. Sorry, I'm actually in my BigCommerce employee school. trying to go through some of the use cases you've been throwing at us. So I can't help it. I've always been a techie.
But I'm really enjoying this episode because it's good. I think it really helps people practically, because these use cases don't apply to every project, but there will be some relevant to every person who goes, oh yeah, actually we'd quite like to do this. So one other one that comes up quite a lot is someone's adding a new collection in. And actually it's a bulk import and it's going across, they've got 3 storefronts and the collection goes across all the storefronts. They might do some localization, or, they might have different price books, fine, whatever. The ability to create products once and then import in bulk and apply across all the storefronts instead of having to duplicate, triplicate work. How is that handled in MSF?
So, look, as I mentioned, it's a single SKU. You just create product or create collection of products. And from there, you basically, in a few clicks, just put those products to the storefronts and categories within those storefronts. And then if you go to, I don't know, if you need to change product description or you need to change image or something, you change it in one place and it basically gets automatically applied to all the storefronts where you sell this product at. So that's the default behavior. However, what we are working on is that if you need for some specific storefront to change the name or change images, basically you can customize that, set alternative product name for the same product with the same SKU, just to be displayed on some specific storefront.
Yeah, we have the overrides in there to do that, don't we? And when Kristina says a few clicks, obviously you can do it in the control panel. But if you've got a very large catalog, you're probably going to do that in a PIM, so in a Kenya or a Pimbly or something that's also MSF compatible, and to get that data in. Or it could be just via the, whatever other back office systems already there in an enterprise retailer via our APIs. Again, just to stress the point, all these changes that we make, they come through API changes first, because again, in the kind of composable world of large retailers, we get it out there quicker because you don't have to build the control panel, but also then they've got that functionality that they need to make us, keep us competitive with our competitors in that composable space.
Well, interesting, there's still some businesses, no matter how sophisticated the platforms they invest in are, use CSVs for their bulk uploads.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Well, we've got that as well, of course. A very nice CSV importer, actually. I was very proud of that when I first joined BC. So, oh, blimey, I remember building one of these years ago, and it took ages.
Right. And then I guess from an execution perspective, so if I've got a single storefront and I want to add a new storefront, how does that look like? How much time does it take? Do you need developers? Can you talk us through kind of actually adding an additional storefront?
I actually have a funny story about that as well. So the way how it works and how it's designed, you just go to your admin panel in Channel Manager, where you have all the different sales channels connected, like Facebook, like Amazon, and there is a button like Create New Channel. When you click it, you see BigCommerce storefront. You just hit Create, set the internal name, and the storefront is created. So it takes like 5 seconds. And when we were going with users, user testing, and going through this flow with users, some of the designers asked a really good question. He was like, people are basically spinning up new line of business. It shouldn't look that easy. Like, it looks as you're doing something really small, but if you think through that, you are basically expanding your brand. You're opening up a new region. It shouldn't take 5 seconds. Like, it shouldn't look like that. But in reality, we have a pattern that allows to spin up additional websites really in few clicks. By default, how it works, there is a default settings level where you can control all the basics of your store, like payment methods, currencies, SEO settings, all of that. And when you spin up a new store, those settings are applied by default to every new store. So if you don't need to change anything, you're all set up. If you would like to tweak something, you can easily do that with it and keep the rest. So this gives flexibility on one hand. On the other hand, this reduces the time to open up a new business line. So it's pretty easy.
I love that. Let's make this more complicated and slower.
Yes. So because like we were shocked. Like, it shouldn't look that simple. People are opening up new businesses. Like, it shouldn't take 2 clicks.
Don't worry, I have a few clients who where that versus the current process would be manna from heaven. So I guess one clarification that the point you said about you can then create local configurations. I think that's a really important one to drill into, because for some people that's a challenge. Is well, actually we maybe 80% is the same, but 20% is different. But currently they're on a technology that means they have to literally create the storefront from scratch and set all those settings again in the new one. So shipping's a good example. So what you're saying then basically is you've got a UK store, you want to clone it for US, but then you need to localize shipping. You clone it, it does it all, and it ports it across. But then you'll have to go in and manually edit the shipping to get it to the local shipping methods that you need, right?
Yeah. So by default, everything is cloned. But then if you need to tweak something, some specific area, you can just easily go and do that.
Yeah. Okay. Fantastic. And the next bit we talked about use cases, what it does, how it does it, some of the benefits and the key features. It'd be useful to talk about some of the current limitations that people need to understand. And I believe there's some limitations around, I think, Jim, you touched on it earlier, around number of products per storefront and number of variants per product. And from what I read, it's quite large, and it won't affect many businesses, but product limit of 10,000 products per storefront, and then 70 variants per product. Is that correct? Is that still a current limitation, or is there flexibility, like you said, where if somebody has a use case where actually we need more, that there's extensibility to that?
It's 25K products already, but and we keep growing those numbers. But yeah, as Jim mentioned, there is always a flexibility. Like we cannot say no to sales team, never. So when they come with a deal, we have to find a way how to support that. So
basically, what happens, James, is they come to us, a merchant comes to us and says, yeah, we're just a bit over that limit. Can we try it? I ask Kristina and Anthony and team, and then we have a bit of an argument, and then we test it and go, yeah, that's all right. It doesn't always happen, but that's it's more about limits of testing, if you know what I mean, from our side. And that's why it's already gone up to 25,000, because we're pushing it, we're testing it, and making sure that ultimately it's a SaaS platform, right? We're all merchants are running on BigCommerce, so we don't want to break it for everybody. That would be an absolute disaster. So there's that circumspect professionalism about the way we deploy, and we deploy automatically a number of times a week, right? New software all the time. I keep going on about this, but with Scenaric, I used to make quite a lot of money doing upgrades, and a lot of that money doesn't, SIs can't do that because we're always upgrading the software ourselves, if you know what I mean, which is brilliant for merchants because they get that, all those new features, if you know what I mean. And so it's important to point out that also applies to those limits that we talked about as well.
So the category limit was 100. Is that increasing as well?
All those limits will be increasing. Yeah. Basically, we started from the most important ones like orders, like catalog. So with orders, previously in beta, we set this limit to 1,000 per day. Of course, it's not very flexible. We just basically started this to go through closed beta to make sure everything performs as we expect. So now we're shifting to the maximum amount of orders per minute, which is going to be pretty high. So this should fit like 99% of all the use cases, probably except only some crazy flash sales that our engineering team is having heart attacks when they see that. So
Subfolders isn't native to Multi-Storefront yet without a headless setup. Is this planned? Is this something you're planning on changing?
Yes, we do. We're trying to figure out what are the domain strategies that merchants are choosing. So Subfolder is a really popular use case. However, it required some much more work to get delivered. So we started with unique domains and subdomains, and we'll move forward with supporting subfolders as well. So yes, this is planned.
And it's an interesting one, isn't it, Kristy? Because obviously, in the sales team, we get asked for it, so we badger engineering for it. And fair point, a couple of the guys in the engineering team came back and said, yeah, but that's not Google's recommendation for best SEO. They prioritize based on, from what I understand, and I was looking at Google documentation again last week, trying to explain this back to a merchant or a prospect. on independent domains, then subdomains, then subfolders. I get why people want to do it because it's actually a lot easier to maintain and manage.
Yeah.
But if you want to maximize SEO, and BigCommerce prides itself on the strength of its SEO capabilities, then you probably want to think about the way that you do it from the way we do it. You know what I mean? But again, subfolders are available if you do it headless or composable, because of course it is, right? That's being handled by a different part of the stack at that point. So there are always ways of doing it from that perspective.
Yeah, I think the challenge. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
So I think the challenge is for some people, you can't have a local country domain in some countries unless you've got registered business presence, and that creates taxation implications. Therefore, people can't, like Australia, for example. And for some people, they've got a large complex site with subfolders. And actually, the SEO impact of remapping and redirecting and managing that, the risk there is and they've got all their like hreflang and canonicalization linked into that. You suddenly realise that you can do it, but it's a much more complex migration piece. So I think that's where there are, in some use cases, subfolders is definitely the path of least resistance to good SEO.
No, I agree, James. You're right, and that's why it's on the roadmap as well, right? As Kristina said, it's a harder problem.
When?
I refuse to just think.
Since this is recorded, like I don't have a date yet.
Okay, fair enough.
Right.
Well, I wouldn't be doing my podcaster job if I wasn't asking if there is a committed date yet.
This is like when I went on Squawkbox, mate.
And then I guess sticking on along the same lines, it's a URL structure. So not that this is necessarily good practice, or people might not necessarily want this, but can you assign a different URL structure per storefront?
So at this point, this can only be managed with headless, where you build URL structure in the way that you need. On a BigCommerce native end, you can basically create the URL structure that you need, but it's going to be shared across all the storefronts. So if for the product, you selected display category first, and then product name, and then maybe something custom, it's going to basically be applied to all the storefronts, this URL structure. Same for categories, same for pages. But from what I've seen, we didn't include that into the scope, just because based on what merchants are saying, most of them are using just recommended approach that BigCommerce has set by default, which is optimized for SEO. So we haven't seen much that people go and change this setting a lot. So we didn't hear any feedback either during closed beta or right now when people are already using that on live stores that they actually need that. So they're pretty quiet about this capability.
Can you give us 2 examples of brands that are using multi-storefront effectively, and maybe just talk a bit about kind of how they're using it, how they're managing kind of different aspects of the store, etc.?
Jim, I thought this is going to be yours.
It is going to be mine, without a doubt. So I talked to Bullet Group already. So Bullet Group do rugged mobile phones. So they've actually got 2 different BigCommerce stores now, and that's a deliberate decision because they've got 2 different sites. So capphones.com, which is Caterpillar rugged phones, ultimately for builders. My half brother's a builder. My half of my entire family are in the building trade, to be fair. So it was interesting to me when smartphones started coming out. These ruggedized phones with dual SIMs in it. It was all the whole almost subculture that I had no idea about until they came around to do my house, you know what I mean? So MotorolaRugged.com was the first one that went live. Cat Phones is the second one from Caterpillar. So effectively, they were originally on Magento, and then they moved to Shopify, and they were struggling with this need that they had to sell across all of Europe, ultimately, from that side of it. With Shopify, I believe they're already starting to use WordPress. They like the WordPress features, which again is interesting for me. Enterprises are back in the day when I was selling some of the older monolithic software. Who could it be? I never mentioned them before. People say, "Oh, this isn't WordPress, is it?" When I was showing them the different kind of cockpits that you needed to use to edit the front end. Because people were using them on their own personal blogs, or they were helping their kids out with it, or their mates, or whatever. So they'd already gone down that route, and so they're using, I think it is 27 headless storefronts on both stores for Motorola Rugged and for Cat Phones to sell across Europe ultimately. So there's a case study on the BigCommerce.com website. So it's a bullet group is what you need to search for. But just reading it as I look in front of me, 125% increase in AOV from the features that we had in there, and in terms of making it easier ultimately to choose upgrades and see the different kind of colors and other bits and pieces and size you got on that. 200% increase in revenue since launch, and a 35% decrease in abandoned cart rate using our optimized one-page checkout. Fundamentally, Ryan, some real nice quotes in there. He was saying, ultimately, they needed a system where they didn't have to flip back and forth between different admin control panels for different orders. They're getting all their orders from those different storefronts into one spot ultimately, and therefore they can know what to ship, and they can do that integration from one BigCommerce backend very easily. So Motorola Rugged actually went live first. It was a really quick build. I think it was 3 months. We had some teething troubles because we were working on the early closed beta, but still a 3-month build is not bad, if you know what I mean. And then Cat phones went live very quickly soon afterwards. And it came back to that ability of reusing what they'd already built from that side, if you know what I mean. And look, it goes from strength to strength. The other one I'll talk about, from my side, is a large fashion retailer. I won't talk to their performance because that will be material non-public information for them. But fundamentally, tedbaker.com, I can talk about it. It's in the public domain, so I will use their name. Everyone knows that it's launched on a combination of us, a React front end built by Wunderman Thompson Commerce, and then Bloomreach powering the search and merch and the experience management of it. Again, I think there's a multiple headless storefronts there. Again, on that side, it's been a fantastically successful project, actually, in terms of, I know in the marketplace people were thinking it wasn't, but it kind of started in anger in April last year, launched in March this year. If you go and have a look at the website, you can see there's multiple different languages. It's optimized for mobile. There's some really nice UX features on there that are helping with the performance of the site. Odd thing, really, like the size guide. The size guide is beautiful, and it just works really well. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because that's not really anything to do with a particular tech platform. That's just the way that they built the front end, but it just works and it looks lovely. And it's obviously all CMS controlled. Again, it takes us to that optimized one-page checkout. And that's what I love about the kind of disruptive nature of BC for enterprise merchants. I keep coming back to it. But, if you think about the levers of e-commerce, James, you heard me pitch this at you years ago when you were doing selection when we first met. You kind of got 3. How many visitors you've got on the site, what the AOV is, and then the conversion rate. Okay, and then obviously the returns rate, the other side. You've got to take that off, sadly, for fashion particularly. But that wisdom of the crowds of it makes sense for BigCommerce to get the conversion rate as high as possible, right? The more GMV we get going through the platform, it's better for us, better for our merchants. It's a true win-win scenario for us. So we have a team of UX engineers. We are always trying to optimize that one-page checkout. If you look at that brand, what they've done is they've downloaded our checkout.js. It's available in GitHub. Effectively, it's the code that we use, but it allows enterprises to extend it. So it's been extended for ship from store and ship to store and that kind of functionality. But ultimately, it's using the same UX design that we have in there already. They've added in postcode lookup again to make it as easy as possible. The idea being to get to the point where effectively it's almost like a one-click checkout. That's brilliant, right? That really works. We take that kind of all those learnings and provide them to our merchants via the tools that they want to use, and they see better results out of it. So, again, I can't talk to results yet, but I'm sure there'll be a case study coming out very soon. I can't wait. Well, you'll certainly hear about it because I won't stop shouting it across LinkedIn for ages, just like people said that it would happen.
Not like you to be shy about sharing case studies.
Not at all. Not at all. People need to hear about success.
Excellent. Well, that we've covered off all the questions. I'm hoping for people listening, it's been an interesting episode. We've had lots of practical information about where MSF is and the roadmap and what you can't do, but what's in beta, some of the limitations, but how those are being expanded. So that's been really interesting. Thanks, Jim and Kristina, for taking the time to come on today.
Thanks, guys. That was cool.
Thank you for having us. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. And again, Kristina, thank you from me and your team in difficult circumstances. But
yes,
just keep smashing it out there. You're doing a fantastic job. It's brilliant to work with you.
Thanks, Joe.
And thanks to everyone, as always, for listening. We do appreciate it. Keep an ear open for our next episode. As we say, we drop them every week. Do subscribe, and we'd love a rating on Apple or Spotify or YouTube. Take care. For more information on this topic, head over to replatform.fm for our audio podcasts. To discuss a project, or if you'd like to chat about any of the topics covered in this episode in more detail, please reach out to myself, James Gurd, or my co-host Paul Rogers via LinkedIn and Twitter. Thanks again for listening, and keep your ears peeled for the next episode.